Listen, today I'll tell you the next chapter of the story that will truly send chills down your spine. Remember, bit of a curse if you missed episode 1, make sure to watch it first, because today we will dive even deeper into the terrifying events. The air in the town had changed. It was as if something had shifted at its very core. The oppressive weight that had hung over the haunted spot, the one where the ghost appeared every night at 12:13, had lifted. But there was no relief, only a sense of foreboding that hung thick in the streets. It was as if the curse had morphed, slithering away from the surface, preparing to return in a form more dangerous than before. Partha and Dr. Rao hadn't expected the consequences of their actions to be so severe. In their attempt to break the curse, they had unknowingly freed something darker. It had been imprisoned for centuries, bound by the very same seal they had tried to complete. The ghost, once a tragic figure, was gone. But what replaced it was something far worse. It began subtly. At first, it was just a sense of unease. People who had lived near the cursed spot, once relieved by the disappearance of the ghost, began reporting strange occurrences. It wasn't the ghost they feared, but an overwhelming presence that seemed to shadow them. The haunting melody that Partha had heard before, the one that accompanied the ghost's appearance, had returned, but this time it was different. It was louder, more insistent. It didn't just play at midnight, it followed people. Whispers began to fill the empty spaces of the town, and every reflection seemed to show something that wasn't their figure, always in the corner of their vision, its shape indistinct but unmistakably terrifying. Partha could feel it too. The mark on his arm, the runes from the symbol, had begun to burn with an intensity that left him sleepless. No matter how many times he tried to wash it away, it remained like a brand. Every night, the whispers grew louder, and shadows seemed to grow longer, stretching into the corners of rooms, curling around his thoughts. He could hear the heartbeat of the town, quickening with every step he took, as if the curse had seeped into the very ground beneath him. Dr. Rao, too, was suffering. The mark had affected her in ways that words couldn't describe. Her once steady mind now felt clouded, as though something else was lurking just beneath the surface, waiting to rise. But the worst part was that they couldn't go back. They had broken the seal, and in doing so, had unlocked the darkness it contained. Weeks passed, and the town became a shadow of its former self. People began to leave, moving far away, unable to live with the constant dread that now seemed to be everywhere. The once bustling market squares were empty. The houses that once stood tall in pride had become dilapidated, forgotten relics of a town that had been consumed by its own history. Even the clock tower, which had been a proud landmark of the town, had fallen into disrepair, its bells silent, as though it, too, feared the stroke of 12:13. But there were those who couldn't leave, and they were the ones who felt the worst of it. The curse was no longer tied to a specific hour. It was everywhere, every minute, growing and festering like a wound hint heal. The townsfolk could sense it. There was something new at play, something far more dangerous. One evening, Partha and Dr. Rao met at the now deserted library, searching for answers. They had uncovered all they could, but there was still one piece missing, something they had overlooked in their rush to break the curse. The ancient manuscripts they had studied had described the creation of the original seal, but they had never mentioned what would happen if it was undone. It wasn't just the ghost that had been imprisoned, it was the source of the curse itself, a malevolent force that fed on fear and sorrow. As Partha and Dr. Rao pored over the final fragments of the manuscript, they discovered a shocking truth: the curse had never been a singular entity. It had been a cycle, an endless loop of loss and despair, passed down through generations. The ghost had been only one form of it. The darkness they had unleashed wasn't an entity of one shape, but a manifestation of the curse itself, a living, breathing force that adapted to the fear it fed on. It had been bound for so long, and now, freed, it had taken root in the town, feeding on the fear of its remaining inhabitants. The more fear it consumed, the stronger it grew. Partha and Dr. Rao knew they had to stop it. This time, there were no rituals, no symbols to complete. Curse had evolved, and so must they. In their desperation, they turned to the last option they had: a way to confront the darkness, not by sealing it away again, but by breaking its cycle once and for all. It was a dangerous plan, one that required them to face the heart of the curse itself. They ventured back to the haunted spot, the center of it all. As the clock ticked toward 12:13, they knew they had one chance to end it. Parther's heart pounded in his chest as they stood together in the place where it all began. The town around them felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable. At exactly 12:13, a terrible silence filled the air, and then it came. A figure appeared before them, not the ghost they had once seen, but a dark silhouette, its form ever-changing. It was no longer bound to the shape of a child. It had become the embodiment of the curse itself. The air grew thick, suffocating. The ground trembled beneath their feet. The mark on Parther's arm burned with an intensity that nearly brought him to his knees. But they were ready. Together they called upon every ounce of their will, every shred of knowledge they had gained. And they faced the darkness head-on. The air crackled with energy as they began the final incantation, a chant from the deepest corners of the manuscript, a forbidden ritual that was said to drain the very soul of those who attempted it. The figure before them howled, its shape distorting, its screams filling their minds, but they didn't falter. They completed the incantation. For a moment there was nothing. Silence. Then, a single, blinding flash of light. When it faded, the curse was gone. The figure had vanished. The town was quiet, almost peaceful, as though nothing had ever happened. But the cost was high. Parther and Dr. Rao had lost something vital. The mark on Parther's arm faded, but so did the memories of everything that had happened. They couldn't remember the faces of those they had once known, the streets they had walked down, the very fabric of their past. It was as though the curse had taken not just their lives, but their identities, leaving them empty, shells of who they once were. And so, the town remained empty and forgotten, the curse lifted, but a terrible price. The once terrifying ghost, the entity that had haunted them, was gone, but the true horror was something much deeper, the loss of the lives that had been consumed by it. Some doors, it seems, are meant to stay closed, and some curses, once unleashed, can never truly be undone. The story of the ghost of the specific hour may be over, but the truth of the darkness that lies beneath this world, that's something that will never fade. And now, as we close this chapter, remember this: sometimes it's better to let the mysteries of the past remain unsolved. Some things are meant to stay buried. If you enjoyed this chilling tale, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. And as always, share your thoughts, theories, and questions in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Stay safe. And remember, some things are better left untouched.